Hey Gearheads, and welcome to GT Garage Talk, a discussion about all things automotive. I am your host, Cory, and I just want to say Merry Christmas. We are, as I like to say, here at Christmas Adam, Christmas Eve. Adam comes before Eve, so here we are on the cusp of Christmas 2022, and I have got a very exciting episode for you. At least I think so, spending almost 12 years of my life as an analyst and somebody who absolutely loves cars, speaking with Sam Fiorani about numbers and about cars and about the future of the automotive industry. He is an analyst and is looking past 2030, which is where many automakers say is their drop dead deadline to be all electric. So he has a lot of insight, and more so than myself and what we can see reading Car and Driver and Motor Trend and going to gtgaragetalk.com as to what the future of the industry looks like, and the players and what the shift in the dynamic of the industry is going to be over the next 10 plus years. And so we just really do have a great conversation. We do talk a lot of electric. Brace yourself for a lot of EV talk in this week's episode. But again, talking future of the industry, that's kind of where we're going. So it's unavoidable, unfortunately. And then, of course, as per usual, when I interview guests here on the podcast, especially new guests, we'll close out with a little bit of fun in our random misfire. But you didn't come here to listen to me ramble. You came to hear a genuine discussion about all things automotive. And with that, I welcome on Sam Fiorani. Sam, it is so great to have you on the podcast for Christmas this week and talk cars and kind of dig into your background a little. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Merry Christmas to you.
Merry Christmas to you as well. So we've got just numerous different directions we could go. We've got some conversations you and I have had online that we could cover. But first, before we dig into any of that, why don't we kind of level set and give our listeners an idea of where you come from in the automotive industry, what it is you do, and your perspective, so to speak.
I've been an analyst for the automotive industry for the last 25 years. I currently work for AutoForecast Solutions, where I'm in charge of the global vehicle forecasting.
Okay.
It's my job to track every vehicle around the world, every plant, for the next 8 years.
Oh my goodness.
And we even have a side forecast where we go out another 6. So we're looking at vehicles through 2035 at the moment.
Holy cow. So I fully foresee us talking about the EV future at some point in this podcast, because that is well past many automakers' all EV deadline or their beginning stages. But as a former analyst myself, I'm a numbers nerd. I love it. We've had Ed Kim from Auto Pacific on, and we've talked numbers. So I don't want to get too nerdy for our audience here, but I can definitely foresee us digging into the minutia of the industry just a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. That's what I do. I've always been a numbers guy, and I've, like I said, 25 years doing this. I wrote car repair manuals prior to that.
Okay.
I have had a little bit of forays into analysts as an analyst in consumer products.
Okay.
But cars are my background. I've been a car person since I could speak.
Okay. I'm not too far behind you there. I waited till I was a grand old age of 9 before I really got into things. But, come at all ages. I've got a good friend, the vehicle nanny, who is nurturing that love and passion for vehicles, whatever the age may be. But let's dig into things a little bit. We are at the crossroads of the automotive industry. I know I've gotten much hate online for my EV posts, particularly the F-150 Lightning. We are at the dawn of the electric revolution. We've seen it coming for a while now. What are your thoughts from where you sit and the things that you're seeing from your vantage point on where the industry is going?
The electric vehicle is coming. There's no doubt about it. And we're going to see a large number of manufacturers switching from ICEs, from internal combustion engines, to EVs over the next 15 years or so. It's going to take a while before the whole infrastructure builds up. We've been building an ICE infrastructure for 125, 130 years.
Yes.
So it's not going to go like, overnight, but we're going to build this infrastructure up with new suppliers, with charging stations, with manufacturing. It's going to take a long time to do this, but as the regulations require less polluting engines, you're going to see this come faster. We're going to have more hybridization, more fully electric vehicles. It's going to happen relative to the growth of the ICE. It's going to happen very quickly, but it's still going to be over 15 to 20 years before any manufacturer becomes, any global full range manufacturer becomes fully EV.
Yeah, so we've got brands like Lexus, which is the luxury arm of Toyota. We've got brands like Cadillac, the luxury arm of General Motors. Divisions of companies saying all electric or all electrified, depending on, how the winds blow the day they are speaking. And but to see a full portfolio where it's nothing but electric from some manufacturers that have been over 100 years, you see that still a couple decades off at least, right?
Well, at least 10 years out before we see any sizable brand changing over. We're going to see Volvo. We'll likely see Cadillac outside of the Escalade changing over to EV in this decade. The great thing about electric vehicles is that when you get to the performance end of a vehicle, ICEs do a very good job.
Right.
But once you get to a certain power level, the emissions go through the roof. So you can't really keep up with all the laws and keeping the cars clean and keeping the fuel economy high enough to sell them without going EV, with at least going hybrid.
Right.
And so we're going to see a lot of these performance brands that, brands like Ferrari, where nobody takes a Ferrari on a cross-country tour.
Right.
So you're going to see companies like Ferrari and Lamborghini and the really high-end performance companies switch probably first, completely first. That way, because they can get the performance that you cannot get out of an ICE. How many ICEs can you name that can do 0 to 60 in under 2 seconds?
Yeah.
Well, there are, a handful of EVs that can, and there will be more.
Well, Jason Camisa over at Haggerty recently put that to the test with the Lucid Sapphire and the Model S Plaid, and even a Ducati two-wheel vehicle trying to best the newest, latest, and greatest when it comes to EV performance. It is getting just a little bit absurd. And the thought that these prices could come down to where, quote unquote, normal people have that level of performance is a little scary to me. I don't know about you, but.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. No, I know people that shouldn't even be in like a 400 horsepower internal combustion car, much less something that can do 0 to 60 in under 2 seconds.
I know people who shouldn't be driving a 100 horsepower car. Okay. So, I'm all for the autonomous future for other people to drive them. Yes. Because I want them off my streets.
Yes. So there are benefits to all of this, and it's just all in how it plays out, who opts to buy what. But yes, there are absolutely people out there that I'm like, no, you don't need that. Please stay away, stay clear.
I remember it wasn't that long ago when like the Dodge Neon could do 0 to 60 in under 7 seconds, which was unheard of for a car that cost $10,000.
Right.
And I'm thinking, these people shouldn't be driving that fast. And now we have normal cars that can do half that time.
Right.
That's incredible.
I mean, the Prius is even doing that now. So the fact that something with totally not performance intentions is to that level now is something to behold. And just to see how the industry has changed over 20, 30, 40 years has been quite ridiculous. And it's been interesting to see for me. Like, I grew up, my heyday, so to speak, were the 90s and 2000s American V8 powered. And I remember like 5.5 seconds 0 to 60 was like the number. And now like that's considered slow by every metric out there. And it's just ridiculous. I think we are getting to the point. I know we are getting to the point, especially, I mentioned the Lucid Sapphire, where the incremental gains for the price that you're having to pay for it are just absolutely ridiculous, but that will trickle down. And the limitations really now are on the tire companies to make a
Oh yeah,
tire that can
absolutely. Yeah.
actually withstand all of it. So, yeah.
Well, that's the thing about an electric vehicle is it's more digital than analog, where I always consider an ICE more analog, and the ability of an electric vehicle to sense the road
Right.
more accurately and stay in contact with the road to get every tenth out of that 0 to 60 time. The potential is fantastic to be able to do that for all four wheels,
Mhm.
to make sure that all four wheels are sticking to the ground and getting you that another tenth, another quarter second down the line to 0 to 60 or a quarter mile. I think the potential is enormous. But like you said, when my timeline starts with the when the Corvette hit 300 horsepower,
Oh, yeah.
and that was such a big deal that you could a $50,000 car at the time was 300 horsepower. That's amazing. And now Toyota Camrys have just shy of 300
Yeah.
horsepower, so it's nothing anymore.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. And so that kind of lends me to, like, from your perspective, what brands are set up best for this future climate? I know General Motors has kind of taken the let's let current product not a suffer is kind of harsh word, but more or less rot on the vine, so to speak, for sake of the electrified future. And they've gambled more on future product and kind of let modern product do its thing and run its course. We've got Hyundai, Genesis, Kia out there, absolutely, in my opinion, killing it with charging technology and just in-vehicle technology. But what brand, from your perspective, is really set up best for this new age?
You're not too far off on the future of the ICE. There's not a lot of money being invested in brand new engines, and transmissions had basically come to 10 speeds,
Right.
and you're not going to go much further than that. You start losing efficiency after about 10 speeds. So
And you've got
um,
brands like Ford and GM partnering together to make a 10 speed. That's when you know something's up. And it's like,
well, yeah, when the DNA of a vehicle is more the engine than the transmission,
mhm.
it made sense for companies to collude on the things like transmission engineering, and putting a 10 speed in Ford's NGMs. It makes sense, and it costs them less. It makes the whole product more efficient to build.
Right.
But as we transition to EVs, the bigger companies are going to be better prepared because they have more money to spend on it. The Mazdas of the world, the Subarus of the world are going to have to rely on somebody bigger.
Mhm.
But General Motors, Volkswagen, Hyundai, Ford, these companies have all the resources that they could muster to put towards this, and they're going to spend billions of dollars over the next 5 to 10 years to make that first step into making EV plants, generating the new drivetrains that they need, and then building the battery facilities. It's gonna take a ton of money, but the bigger companies will allow the technology to trickle down to the smaller companies.
Well, what's been really interesting to me is a quote unquote relatively small player like Hyundai uh, being so far ahead of major players like Toyota and Honda, who kind of got caught looking the wrong direction. Honda decided to partner with GM for the immediate and the foreseeable future, but will be doing their own thing. And then Toyota is just now saying, oh, yeah, we better step it up past the Prius. Like, there's got to be more to it than that. So, very interesting for the Korean automaker to. I feel like they've been reading Toyota's playbook for a while now with spinning off Genesis, like Toyota did with Lexus in the 90s. So, I don't know. I foresee the future landscape being impacted greatly by brands that saw the writing on the wall, like Genesis. And then we've got Vietnamese company VinFast, which I keep hearing more and more about them. I saw them at LA 2 years in a row. So interesting stuff on the horizon.
Oh, absolutely. And Hyundai's bigger than you think. That just because Hyundai is newer,
Hmm.
uh, they literally have only been building cars for the last 50, 55 years.
Right.
And their own cars for about 48. I think it was the early 70s when they built the first car. But just because they're young does not mean they're small.
Right.
They have Hyundai, between the combination of Hyundai and Kia is definitely in the top 10 of global manufacturers.
Hmm.
And I believe, depending on how you count it, they may be in the top 5.
Wow.
It's a large company backed by a lot of money, and the Korean cables have a lot of money tied up like the Japanese Kuritsus. They have a lot of money across a lot of industries, and automotive is one of those focal industries for any country.
Right.
If you've made it as a country, if you have your own auto manufacturer. Uh, but Hyundai Kia is South Korea's Toyota. It's their General Motors. It's their Volkswagen, and they see this as the future. A lot of a lot of growing companies see being on the cutting edge of electric vehicles as the way to grow their business. And you see that in China, because all the major Chinese companies are focusing on the EV side, because that's going to make them a player when they begin exporting in large numbers. And Korea just sees that as their next step. Their first step was getting in as a cheap car. Their second step was making a quality product. Their next step is making an electric vehicle, and they're well on their way to do that.
Yeah, they've absolutely been killing it in my summation of the entire industry. It seems like they've been rolling out win after win after win. So big
They're
kudos to
very
them.
focused on what they're doing, and they've been focused on that for in the U.S. market for at least 20 years,
Yeah.
where they've concentrated on making sure that the product is there, the quality is there. They up their styling game, they up their powertrain game, and now they're moving into electric vehicles. It's definitely the playbook that everybody else should be reading now.
Yeah. Which, you know, I brought up General Motors. I'm a GM fanboy. It's the Camaro that brought me into loving vehicles. I'm wearing my Team Corvette shirt as we speak. So obviously, I have a love for all things General Motors. And a couple weeks back, I spoke with, again, the vehicle nanny on the podcast about the electric Corvette and the sub-brand there. And now there are rumors of an Escalade sub-brand and a Camaro sub-brand in the electrified realm. And as we sit here and record, I've released my first video summarizing my thoughts and opinions on the 2023 gas-powered Cadillac Escalade. So very interesting, just a couple of weeks worth of news rolling out of General Motors. Again, wanting to see these heritage nameplates carried forward in Camaro, in Corvette, in Escalade. What are your thoughts there on all these sub-brands that the General is doing to follow up with the Hummer sub-brand under GMC?
General Motors had a ton of brands just 20 years ago.
I remember, and it kind of led to their demise.
They were spread way too thin, between the Opals and the Holdens and the Pontiacs and everybody else. They just had too much going on. The idea of spinning off Corvette as a sub-brand is a great idea. The idea that people buy Teslas because it's a great electric vehicle is kind of bogus, because it is a great electric vehicle, but that's not why people buy it. It's a great vehicle compared to what was available at the time for the price. It just happens to be electric.
Right.
And they have built this aura around Tesla that Porsche had back in the 70s and BMW had back in the 80s. It's that it shows more about the owner than the product itself. And so the Tesla image that has come up with that is hard to duplicate on someone else. And Ford saw it and said, we're going to make a Mustang electric.
Mm-hmm.
And so they piggyback 50 years of Mustang history and put it into an electric vehicle, and suddenly it has its own aura as it comes out the gate.
Right.
So now you're not guessing what it is. It's not another Ford electric vehicle. It is suddenly a Mustang, and you take it already with an image.
Right.
Tesla built its image over the last 20 years, and General Motors has Corvette. It's an established image for the last 70 years.
Right.
So if you take that name, which in itself wouldn't likely die off if you did not make it electric.
Right.
You're only going to get another decade, maybe 15 years out of an ICE performance vehicle, especially with the performance that's coming up on EVs. It's going to fall behind everybody else if you don't make it electrified somehow. And taking that name and putting it onto a whole series of performance-oriented electric vehicles makes sense. And now you have a one-to-one against Tesla. You have an image and a product that can go against Tesla, whereas you're never going to sell a Bolt to a guy who's going to buy a Model 3.
Right.
You know, these things aren't going to happen. So bringing the image with Corvette with it suddenly brings you onto that level now, and you can go head to head with the number one player in the market.
Now, I've conversed with many a Corvette owner and been part of several different Corvette clubs. Some are struggling with the idea of the C8 Corvette, that the engine's in the wrong spot. We've got rumors, we've seen spy shots, and Chevy's teased us with some stuff about the hybrid E-Ray Corvette, which is even more blasphemy. I mean, we still have people that are mourning the loss of the pop-up up and down headlights, as they've come to be called, in the C5 to C6 transition. So just in the past 20 years, Corvette owners have had to deal with a lot of change and a lot of loss of tradition. You and I were talking a little offline about the production of these future Corvettes. You know, Bowling Green is now the synonymous home for the Corvette where they are all made. But as we expand out and use the Ultium electric platform and go to all electric and possibly an SUV, these quote unquote Corvette faithful are really having to like gulp it down, that all the change that has come to their beloved nameplate. Does it water down what Corvette is when you make an SUV with the Corvette badge on it? Have you seen that with Mustang from what?
Well, you have that potential. You have the potential of watering down the image. You know, I was a big Jaguar fan, and when Jaguar started spreading out between their core models, back when they had a sedan and a coupe, and then they started coming out with a smaller sedan and then a smaller sedan and a station wagon and an SUV and all this other stuff. You're just like, aren't you watering down that brand? But the image is still there. It's still a performance vehicle as long as you keep the core DNA of the brand. As long as a Corvette is still performance oriented. Porsche did the same thing. When the Cayenne came out, how many faithful just said, no. Not only is the engine not in the right place, now it's got 4 doors and 4-wheel drive and it sits that high. How can that be a Porsche? And, you know, the Cayenne and the Macan are the 2 top selling Porsche models they have.
And so it has made the 911 even more. It's funded the 911 basically.
No, absolutely. No, it pays for the one that, you know, like I said, the Corvette will die on the vine if you don't do something to it. Each generation of Corvette has been better than the last. And the engineers themselves have said that the last generation Corvette was as far as they could go with the front engine design. They needed to move to the rear engine to move to the next level. And the last Corvette was a spectacular vehicle. Yeah. That's the only way you can go, is to move up, to progress forward. And electrifying it, at least with the E-Ray, that will be the next step for the coupe. But you're going to have to see electric vehicles. And like I said, taking the name, as long as you don't dilute it by making it a knockoff of the Bolt or something lesser than what the Corvette should be, then they should be able to do this. And with Mach-E's, they sell for $60,000 and $70,000. These are not entry-level vehicles.
Right.
And just like the Corvette, the Mustang would wither away if you didn't do something to keep up with the times. So, we're on our last generation of fully ICE Mustangs. And from the stuff that we've seen relatively recently, the next generation is likely to be a fully electric Mustang. So we're at the end of the performance for the ICE. You can't get any further without damaging the emissions, without getting terrible gas mileage, without messing with the longevity of the engine. But it's so easy to put an electric powertrain in it. You don't have to deal with emissions. You don't have to deal with all these things, and it has fewer parts. So
Yeah.
it should be more reliable.
Do you see a future where there are, maybe it's even a boutique type manufacturer or just a vehicle line that maintains internal combustion for those just unwilling to let go of the past, or uh, does it wither and die completely? What, calm our fears or help us brace for the future here? Like Dodge, for example, when Dodge of all companies is producing an electric vehicle with a weird exhaust sound to brace us for the future, is it truly ending?
The big problem with a Hemi engine is that it is a dirty engine to start with.
Right.
And I always bring up the number that uh, the emissions from a modern car are roughly 1% of what they were in 1970.
Wow.
Modern cars are clean,
Right.
but they still spew a lot of dirt. So getting that last little bit of emissions out of there is the next step, and you have to do that from electrification. The Hemi, on the scale of all the engines available now, is a dirty engine. It's a performance engine. It's fun to drive. It's got a lot of things going for it. It's relatively efficient for fuel economy for the amount of power it puts out,
Makes great
but it's
noise.
still dirty.
Yeah.
So making that leap is a great idea for Dodge. It's going to be very difficult to keep an ICE company, even a model going, simply because emissions regulations are going to tighten up to the point where it'll squeeze it out. It'll make it too expensive to build. It'll be too expensive to just get past emissions regulations. Unless they come up with, I really like the idea of synthetic fuels, the idea of hydrogen as a fuel for an internal combustion engine. I like these ideas. They should be cleaner than a gas-powered vehicle. They do have issues, but they should be cleaner.
Well, Toyota,
especially if you can make them affordable.
Yeah, Toyota, I don't want to say they're going all in, but that was the direction they were headed in hydrogen. That kind of got them caught more or less off guard with full electrification, because they saw hydrogen as the future. And outside of California, you've got no options here in the States. So is that a viable option in the future? Do you see, I mean, with one of the world's, if not the world's current largest automaker betting big on hydrogen, shouldn't that be somewhat of the future?
Hydrogen is likely the future, but it is way down the line.
Okay.
We have to find a cheap, easy, and clean way to make hydrogen, to get it out of water or whatever you're pulling the hydrogen out of. It's too expensive, and it has emissions in the process.
Right.
So if we're going to go to a clean future, hydrogen is the clean future, but we have to make the hydrogen clean first. But it's going to be another 20 years before we can get that to mass market. Like you said, Southern California has like a dozen hydrogen stations. That's not big enough to actually have volume sales of hydrogen vehicles. But a fuel cell vehicle is the next step in an electric vehicle. They are the same vehicle. They have the fuel cell vehicle has a much smaller battery, but it still has an electric running gear.
Right.
So as long as we develop that technology on the drivetrain side, eventually we can replace the batteries, and all that weight and all the chemicals and everything that go into a battery, we can get rid of those things into a fuel cell eventually. But it's, like I said, we're talking 2040 and beyond.
Well, our good buddy Tim Esterdahl at Pickup Truck Plus SUV Talk is convinced that hydrogen is the future of pickup trucks and towing. He spent some time with the F-150 Lightning. He likes the concept, but in execution for the people who actually need to tow, who need essentially V8 or turbocharged V6 towing capability, that hydrogen is the next step, and EV can't even play. So by your estimation, we're about 20 years off from full death of gas for at least the workhorses of the world.
Yeah. If you ever tow anything, you know a diesel is fantastic.
Right.
The torque is available in a diesel. The ability to put in all the fuel that I need to drive 400 miles, 300 or 400 miles, and I can fuel it up in under 10 minutes. You can't do that with a battery.
Right.
I can get a couple hundred miles in half an hour,
Right.
but I'm not going to get the range to long haul carry goods
Right.
in a electric vehicle quickly. And hydrogen is the way to do that. If I can put hydrogen into my vehicle at about the same time it takes me to fill the diesel, that's a great step forward from taking a couple of hours to get a full charge of batteries to long haul a semi.
Well, we've talked a lot about what you foresee and what I foresee and kind of the writing on the wall for the future. But from a personal perspective, what excites you in the industry now? I know, as you mentioned coming on, you look 6 to 8 years in the future. But what excites you personally now in the automotive industry?
I'm looking forward to whatever comes next, whatever somebody decides is that radical new thing. When when you had the Mustang 60 years ago, when you had the minivan 40 years ago, you had the modern crossovers, all these different steps forward in design and finding a new niche to get into. I love that. I love when somebody actually goes outside the box and says, look, here's a new way to transport your people and your goods. um, I'm always looking forward to what the stylists and what the engineers have on their drawing boards, and finding out what the next thing is. And everybody's exploring to find out what that big thing is, because there's a lot of money riding on making that, being the first player in the minivan, in the pony car, in muscle cars, in whatever it was. And everybody's trying to hit that big thing for the next thing. And I'm all excited to see what it is.
Yeah, Cadillac has shown us like these transport pods that are electrified using, again, GM's Ultium and everything going on there. Hyundai, I hate to keep bringing them up too, but Hyundai showed us last year at the LA Auto Show their 7 concept, which was basically a living room on wheels with a swiveling quote unquote driver's seat that had a joystick instead of a steering wheel. It's just, there's a lot of what could be, but it, to your point, yes, it will be very, very interesting to see what actually sticks and what everybody clings to. I'm excited.
Electric drivetrains allow you to do a lot of those things you couldn't do before, because before you had to have the engine up front, you had to have the transmission here, you had to have the exhaust pipes, you had to design around a lot of hard points that you don't have anymore. And having smaller motors and batteries tucked into the floor and all these different things allows the engineers to go out on a limb and find a way to make the nose smaller or bigger, or but they're no longer limited by the engine, the gas tank, all the hard points that you have to design around to have a gas powered vehicle. It's going to be very exciting. That gives the designers more freedom.
I'm intrigued by a small startup company called Canoe and what they are able to do. It's basically, I see it as more the modern Type 2 VW bus. Like, I think it is more on the nose with the VW bus thing than the ID Buzz from actual VW is. And I think we'll actually see those on the road here in America before we see the ID Buzz on the road, which is just the biggest travesty. I think the VW Beetle and the VW ID Buzz, as they're calling it, should have been like the first 2 Tesla competitors out on the market. And what VW was doing, dropping the ball there, is beyond me.
like I said, it comes with an aura. You already know what a Beetle is. You already know what the transporter or the bus was. You already know those things. They're known things to American buyers. And if you just take that DNA and transform it into an electric vehicle, suddenly you have half the marketing paid for. You don't have to reintroduce the thing to the public. They already know what it is, just like the Mustang, the Corvette, and everything else. But to your point on the Canoe, we have a product where we have a book where we track all the EV startups around the world. And we currently have no fewer than 150 EV startups that we're looking at that are either just starting production or have already gone out of production in some cases. And those are just the 4-wheeled highway speed passenger vehicles that we're tracking. That doesn't include medium heavy trucks. That doesn't include three-wheeled vehicles. That doesn't include two-wheeled vehicles. We have it doesn't include low-speed vehicles. But there are so many of these companies starting out with a new idea, like the Canoe, like Arrival, like we already mentioned Lucid. All these guys playing in this new white space that said, let's make an American Bentley and call it Lucid.
Yeah.
Let's make a modern bus and call it Canoe. It's a great time to be in the industry, but it's so fraught with so many pitfalls that everybody can step in at a moment's notice. And I've got a list of dozens of companies that have already said, hey, this is too much for us.
Yeah. It will be interesting to see, like, this in a time capsule and see where we are 20 years from now and who's still standing, who rose up from nowhere to surprise everyone, and just kind of where the industry has gone and is going. Yes, it is an absolute exciting time. It is a little bit sad. I will always lament the replacement of a good sounding V8. There's no replacement for displacement.
My project car is an MG midget, so okay. You know I've got a little tiny sports car with a tractor engine under the hood, and that is the sound I'm used to.
Yeah. And we all have these things that are just tied to our memories. I can tell you a GM V8 on startup without hesitation. I can tell you a Ford V8 on startup without hesitation. But
a classic Chrysler starter. That's my sound.
Yeah.
My father was a police officer, and so we always had a unmarked police car in our driveway. And the sound of that starter of a late '70s, early '80s Chrysler V8, it holds a place in my heart, and I can still hear it in my head.
Yep. But we joked before we started recording. My son, 4 years old, about to be 5. He drives his quote unquote electric Jeep and his Power Wheels or whatever off-brand it is. He's not going to know any different. That is normal for him and will be the norm by the time he turns 16. Granted, his gearhead dad will introduce him to all the good things of yore, but yeah. His generation knows no different. I mean, I grew up, Power Wheels were a thing, but then you got gas powered and it made vroom noises and went a whole lot faster. But it's just going to evolve for him. And like, he already knows one pedal driving because that's all there is in that car. So it's going to be an interesting evolution for that age group that knows nothing other. And, old fogies like you and I can lament and complain all we want, but the march of time moves forward. And
my son's a little older than yours, and he's driving, but when he got his license, he wanted a stick shift.
Oh,
so just finding a 16-year-old who wanted to actually drive stick was I did well as a father. How's that?
Yeah, yes, you did. And I drive, my daily is a 2013 Chevy Cruze Eco with a 6-speed manual, just because like it got ridiculously good gas mileage and I needed it at the time I bought it. I'm going to do whatever it takes to keep that thing living until he turns 16, just so he can learn how to drive a stick. And my wife can't even drive. She will learn in that car. Hold me to it. She will learn in that car, or something better. Who knows? But there's just something about it. Granted, there's nothing exciting about that car, so I could leave it running, walk off with the doors in it, and nobody's going to take it for multiple reasons. But yeah.
No, since I turned 16, I literally had 18 months where my daily driver wasn't a stick.
Okay.
And so I bought a new car with a stick shift 7 years ago, and I fear that there won't be one to replace it. So I may have to build my next car.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I mean, when even the Corvette doesn't offer stick anymore,
right?
The writing is on the wall, and Camaro is probably going away. There's
no, the worst sign was when Porsche and Ferrari got away from that. When you have to buy when you either have to or you're forced into buying an automatic Ferrari, even if it's an F1 transmission, it still does not have that pedal.
Right.
And that was the beginning of the end for me.
I drove an early 90s Diablo, which was an experience unto itself. And just, the, it's a ridiculous vehicle all the way around, but the connection you have to it instantaneously by having to learn the 3 pedals and the weird dogleg 5-speed gated transmission is, there's a connection will never be formed like that in an EV. It's just, you get in it and you go. You can already do the best you can do in it by mashing the pedal. And
well, there's my problem with EVs is that I don't see enough character in them. I mean, they're fantastic cars. They're quick. They're quiet. They're smooth. We were talking about driving the Lightning. I drove a Lightning a few months ago, and the thing that annoyed me most about the Lightning was the loudest noise in it was my hand sliding across the steering wheel. You know, the engine sound, the way it drives, the way the transmission shifts is all part of the character of the vehicle. Yeah. And when you take all those things away, you're muting the character of the vehicle. And so I can't really tell you the difference between multiple EVs that I've driven. That, you know, why does this one better? It was a tenth quicker.
Right.
That's why it was better. It had a little bit more room inside, but I can't tell you that I enjoyed driving one over the other.
I will say I have 2 EVs that really stick out to me, and they're both in the luxury space, and it's because they're in the luxury space, and that's the Genesis GV60. Loved that thing. Would buy one now if I could. And then one I had very recently in the Mercedes-Benz EQS SUV. I feel EVs and luxury pair very well together because it's everything a luxury vehicle should be: quiet, smooth, effortless to drive. And both of those, especially the Mercedes, coddled you in a way that only a luxury brand could. So
yeah, I have 2 similar examples. The first time I drove a Model S 10 years ago, it was such a revelation because it was so different than everything else we had driven. And at the time, my boss and I were driving the vehicle, and the Super 7 or the lotto number was like, you know, $100 million at that point. And we just got out of the car and we looked at it, we need to win the lottery. We need this car.
Right.
And it was just such a great car. But the other one that I drove that was that way was the Genesis G70 electric. And when I drove that, I'm like, this is what an electric vehicle should be. It is everything that a luxury car should be. It's quiet, it's smooth, the power's there when you want it, and it was so silent inside. That's what luxury buyers want. And if I were a luxury buyer, it'd be a luxury performance buyer. It would be more of the high-end BMWs or the Mercedes. It would not be the coddle yourself, real quiet, massage seats, all that stuff. I want the performance of the vehicle, and that makes it not for me. But I could see the core luxury buyer loving, like you said, the high-end luxury electrics, definitely the Lucids of the world. The Genesis one was spectacular when I drove it. I'm like, this is, the buyer fits this perfectly.
Well, for me, this will come as no surprise to anyone listening. There's a lot of old oil money here in East Texas, and there's a lot of money here in East Texas. But talking to my friends at our local Mercedes-Benz dealership, they're having trouble turning anything with the EQ badge on it because the infrastructure's just not there. So the cars may be great, but there's still a giant barrier to entry in the infrastructure when really you don't need like if it's your commuter vehicle, just plug it in at home when you get home. That's all you need. But it's just crazy some of the things that would stop people from buying now. I mean, they've got at least 4 EQ models just sitting on their lot while they've had 2 SL Roadsters flip just like that. And I don't know. I feel, like I said earlier, that electric buyers should be the go-to buyer for an electric vehicle, but there's still something holding those people back.
As long as you're not hauling large amounts of stuff and going long distances, an electric vehicle should be your choice. I mean, if you have a charger at home and you don't drive more than 150 miles in a day, you should be fine. Yep. If you drive more than 150 miles a day, your office should have an electric plug for you to plug in. And that should be one of the perks of working wherever you work, is that I should be able to plug in here, go to work, have a full charge, go home.
I I found it interesting with my 70-plus-year-old parents started talking about the idea of an EV being their next vehicle, and I'm like, you absolutely should. It works. But I don't think they will give into it. They're still having a hard time, my dad especially, trying to swallow the hybrid pill, much less full EV. So we'll see where that goes. They've got nothing but time as they look for their next vehicle. But it's interesting to watch their buying process.
Definitely an interesting time to be in the industry.
Yep. And I spent, like I said, and I've told many times here on the podcast, over 11 years in the grocery industry as an analyst, and the decision tree that customers go through for different products is wildly different. While price may be the leading decider on one type of product, quality might be another, or quantity might be another. So when it comes to vehicle buying, just watching everybody's decision tree is so interesting to me. And that is somewhere where I could absolutely get lost in the numbers and seeing the decision tree for EVs, for SUVs, for 3-row SUVs versus 2-row SUVs versus sports cars versus, I could nerd out over that forever.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well,
yeah, we produce a couple newsletters that we put out all the time on the industry, and the people who, like you, geek out on the numbers, just love our analysis of whatever it is. And I enjoy coming up with, we do a special report every month, and I get free reign to come up with whatever I see in the industry that's going on and write something on that one. So of course, our next issue will be how did 22 wrap up and what we're looking forward to in 23 and beyond. But in the past, we've done outlines of, we did one on VinFast. We did one on Scout, all these different companies that are just coming to the market that people want to know about. And why are they important to you? Why do you care? And just digging into the numbers to figure out why anyone should care about Scout is very interesting to bring to the front and tell somebody else.
I'm very interested in Scout, and I'm sad that it's here at the end of the episode that we're even mentioning their name, because there's so much potential there. But again, I feel like VW got so engrossed in, and it's their fault, their emission scandal, that they're quite a ways behind where they should be as one of the biggest players in the market. So yeah, Scout is definitely intriguing to me, to have a brand focused on off-roading, hopefully, with SUVs and in the electric space. It's everything.
This whole story goes full circle. When you go back to Scout, you're still talking about Corvette. You're still talking about the aura that comes with the name. And I think the potential problem is that not enough people remember what Scout is. But, Bronco was the same way. They're playing on the memories of the original Bronco that sold, I think, 200,000 units over its 10-year lifespan. There weren't enough people to buy them that they should be a hit today, but that Ford catered to the right market and brought out the right product, and they're doing fantastic. I swear that in the first year and a half, they sold more of the new Bronco than they did of the first generation completely. Yeah. So, I mean, they did a very good job.
Yeah, and I could go on forever about how misnamed the Blazer is. I think the Blazer EV should have been the Nomad, and that would have been an almost instant hit. And, bring in Tim Allen to help promote the dang thing. And yeah, there's just... Anyway, let's pivot now into a segment I like to call Random Misfire. And we've spent a lot of time talking about EVs, and the random misfire nomenclature may not hold up much longer, but we'll see how it goes. But I've got a list of 20-ish questions. I will pick 8 because, as I mentioned earlier, 8 cylinders should be under the hood of a proper performance vehicle. Man, this episode is really dated, this segment, but they're this or that fun questions, just to kind of learn you a little bit more based on what I've learned about you so far. And we'll just kind of end with a chuckle here. And oh my goodness, I've got to start off with this one. I ask everybody that comes on the podcast, do you name your vehicles?
I have trouble naming the vehicle. I have an affinity towards my vehicles,
Hmm.
but I really haven't been able to put a personality on the vehicle. I love them more than anything else I own,
Hmm.
but I just never, I've never called this one Stella.
Yeah.
I just can't say that's the name of her.
Yeah. And to your point about losing a little bit of personality with EVs, I only foresee that becoming more of a problem with electric vehicles uh, based on the way things are going.
The other way around, it could be that with the electronics that come in the vehicle, it has more of a personality to the person inside it, and you may actually converse with your vehicle and name her or him.
Yes, I will say, trying to do what I do while driving the Mercedes EQS, I had to catch myself in how many times or how I said Mercedes because the trigger word is "Hey Mercedes," and she butted in a few times during the review.
You never realize how close Lexus is to a name of a particular
Mhm,
device
mhm.
until you're walking around talking about cars and it starts going off and trying to answer your questions.
Lucky for me, I'm well embedded in the Apple ecosystem, and until Apple unveils this car that has been rumored for over a decade, um, I have no worries triggering any of my devices talking to or about cars. Huh? Let's see here. Oh, there's so many good ones that off road or on road. What is your preference?
Uh, I have been, because I've been doing this for so long, that I have been allowed the chance to drive some great off-road vehicles. I went to Jeep 101 20 years ago. I got a lot of training off-road, but I'm a racer at heart. I've autocrossed for years. I've taught my son how to autocross, so now he go-karts.
Nice.
It's definitely on road.
Okay. Okay. It's one of those things. You were wanting to win the lotto to buy a Tesla. I want to win the lotto to build my own on road, off road motor park where I don't have to choose. It's like, what car do I want? What experience do I want right now? And hop in it and go. So,
No, I'm building a track in my backyard to do 100 miles an hour around the property.
yeah.
So
All
it's
right.
going to be on road.
Okay. Okay. Lucky for me, I do have a very good off road park within an hour's drive. It's finding a place to really stretch the legs of these powerful EVs that I've had a little bit of a trouble with. I've got Eagles Canyon Raceway about 3 hours for me, but that's just a little bit too far. Oh, here's a good one, especially in on the analyst side of things. Do you prefer color or grayscale?
For
Your paint color of your vehicles.
I There are some spectacular colors out there.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, dealers don't carry them.
Mm-hmm.
So when I see them, I'm like, look at that car. But when I buy one, it ends up being whatever they have on the lot. So my car is a deep charcoal gray.
Yeah.
My previous car was like a robin's egg blue,
Okay.
and I got jealous because the same car was available in this fantastic deeper blue. And every time I saw one, I'm like, that's the color I wanted. But a really good color is fantastic on a car, and grayscale is actually the worst to keep clean.
Mm-hmm.
So I've had white, I've had black. They are terrible.
It's is it a bit of a chicken and the egg situation here because the number one colors are grayscale on the market with red and blue followed right behind. But look at Tesla, that's all they offer. You can actually order them, but that's all they offer. Whereas manufacturers like Genesis have that spectacular Sao Paulo lime. But to your point, dealers don't have them on the lot. So if they're not on the lot, you're not buying them.
Dealers are afraid of risk,
Yeah,
and so
and having one
anything
sit
off
for
of the regular grayscale is risky to them. Just like they say, stick shifts are a risk, but
Mhm.
when you see a stick shift on a used car lot, it sells immediately.
Right.
So
Well, we've been trained over the past 3 years now to expect to wait for a vehicle. So, we've got Ford transitioning to online ordering for their EVs at least. We've got more or less a shift in the buying procedure and processes, do we start to see more color because people are available to and willing to sit and wait now? Because they're going to have to wait anyway. Might as well get the color they want.
Yeah, I would hope that would be a benefit of the last 2 years. The biggest problem is that some of the best colors are extra cost options.
Yeah.
So for my Mazda to get the red that they always advertise,
Soul Red
I think it was a
Crystal.
$500 option just for that color.
Well, yeah. Again, going back to the Escalade video that has dropped this week, $1,300 red paint job on that one. I'm sorry. Like, I know that was the number one comment I got from pretty much everyone was how beautiful that red paint color was.
Yeah.
$1,300? Are you kidding me? It's red paint. Like
The marketers know where they have you.
yeah, that one got me. All right, so you said you like to race. What is more appealing to you? And I really already know the answer here: 0 to 60 or a track.
It's got a handle. I getting to 0 to 60 in 4 seconds is not as big a deal to me as being able to pull, 9/10 of a G or a G in a corner. I want it to be able to stick to the road, go around the cones, take the corners.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I want.
All right, burnouts or donuts. What?
I'm cheap and I don't like seeing my tires go up in smoke. So I'm not a fan of either.
I'm right there with you. I had a Camaro SS for a year, and one of the reasons was the financial position that just buying the rear tires put me in. I was able to buy all 4 for my Chevy Cruze, which replaced it for the price of 2 rears on my Camaro. So yes, I totally feel you on that one.
I'm a member of an organization where every year they would have a slalom race among members, and the winner got a gift certificate for 4 tires. And the same person won it every year. And the first year he did not compete, I won.
Okay.
And so I had my gift certificate, and he came up to me right after and goes, "It's a gift certificate and it doesn't have an expiration date. So wait till you need expensive tires." I said, "Great, thank you very much." And my tires from then on cost me like less than $100 a piece.
Mm-hmm.
They were, and my new car, they were $2 something a piece.
Mm.
Like, gift certificate is coming out. That's it. I'm getting good tires for my car.
Yep. Let's see here. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we got 3 left. Ugh. Most exciting car on the market today for you, in your opinion?
I'm an automotive history buff.
Okay.
So when you talk about things like the revivals of these old brands, that always intrigues me. But I don't know that as much as I like Bugatti, I don't know that I would want a Bugatti.
Mm-hmm.
There's just too many shortcomings in that. But for me, I like the visceral feel of something like a Jaguar.
Okay.
The vehicle itself is exciting to me, but it's not a Mercedes. It's not a BMW. It's not something you see every day. And so when people say it, I go, "That's a good looking car," and I don't see that every day. That's the kind of thing that I really like.
Okay. Hand wash or drive-through car wash?
Again, you get me over a barrel here because I'm lazy and cheap. So the two go against each other. I want to wash my car because it's better for the car. I want to do it myself,
Mm-hmm.
and it's cheaper, but it's so convenient to take it down to the car wash and drop it. I would rather hand wash.
Yeah, I would too. Hand washing. My '07 Silverado saved my life. I have an whole episode about that. But yes, laziness, time now, especially with a 4-year-old in the house, saying I'm going to go spend an hour hand washing a vehicle just doesn't quite fit the way it did when I was, 20 years old. So,
and there was something entertaining when you have a little kid and you go through the car wash, the automatic car wash, and you just put them in there. And they watch all the colors and all the soap and everything. It's entertaining for 10 minutes.
Yes. And it's just something to do where he's still strapped into his 5-point harness. So I'm good. Oh man, I've got one left. You're gonna make it hard for me here. We'll do this one. Favorite car related movie.
Car related movie.
Mm-hmm.
Not only am I a fan of cars and car movies,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm a fan of bad movies.
Oh, okay.
So my wife and I were sitting around and I was looking for a movie to stream, and I'm always searching for something bizarre, and I found Corvette Summer.
Mm-hmm.
And Corvette Summer is a terrible movie with terrible acting, but it's fun for an hour and a half. So there's that one. And uh, I think one of my favorite bad car movies is The Wraith
Okay.
with Charlie Sheen. And my all the little automotive things in this thing that are absolutely terrible, and they're funny because they're terrible. But the best part about it was actually not in the movie. I think it was Motor Trend did a story about the movie and the car in the movie. The car in the movie was a Dodge that had been built for the PPG racing. It was a pace car for PPG, and it was this mid-engined, very sleek car. And they the Motor Trend article, the subheading was proof that good guys drive Dodges. And so that car has always stuck with me. But the movie, it's a terrible movie, but it's a great for gearhead movie.
I have to go check those two out. That's one of the fun parts about
You
all.
haven't seen Corvette Summer?
I have not. I
Oh
figured
my God.
that the modern Need for Speed was as bad as cheesy automotive
Oh yeah,
viewing
absolutely.
it could get. So I will definitely have to get it, watch it, and compare for sure.
After you watch it, the main car in the movie is a mid-70s Corvette that's right-hand drive.
Mm.
And they actually built the car, and it still exists. You can find it online. But when you find it online, look for the detail pictures, because they did the cheapest right-hand drive swap on this car.
Oh,
It
boy.
literally has a steering column that goes through the firewall and a chain drive to the original drive, the steering shaft down the other side of the engine.
Oh,
It is
boy.
the funniest thing to see in pictures.
Oh my goodness. Well, Sam, I do thank you. We could talk for hours more about all things automotive, but I thank you so much for joining with me. I know you said a lot of what you do, your business is in business to business reporting, but where could people find you? Where could we learn more about you, or at least kind of keep up with your escapades?
Yeah, if you're interested in the automotive industry, I'm active on LinkedIn, and I have a space on Twitter. So it's my name, Sam Fiorani, in both cases. But if you like automotive history, I sit on the board of the Boyertown Museum of Historic Vehicles in Boyertown, Pennsylvania. So if you find yourself driving around Eastern Pennsylvania, please stop by the museum. It's a museum full of cars built in Pennsylvania, and we have a subset of electric vehicles that happen to be in that, going back over 100 years.
Interesting.
And if you're in a newsstand, Collectible Automobile every so often runs my articles.
All right. Well, I again thank you so much. I will put links to your Twitter and your LinkedIn down in the show notes for those that are interested. But thank you so very much, and you have a wonderful and Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you. Thanks for talking to me.
Huge thanks to Sam for joining me. So much more I wanted to talk about this week. I don't know if you could tell that. Electric vehicles do excite me. They excite me for reasons beyond just the fact that they're ridiculously fast right out of the gate. You know, I'm an analyst by trade, by nature, and just seeing the shift and, seeing companies rise above other companies and old brands being resurrected in Scout and sub brands being created around Corvette and Mustang and maybe Camaro and Escalade, and all that just really excites me, and I hope it excites you. That's what this podcast is about, to dream and think and anticipate. I don't know, just be excited about all things automotive. And so I really do thank Sam for his insight and his time, just shooting the breeze, talking the future things in the automotive industry with me here right before Christmas. I thank you so much for listening and for following along with us this year. So excited to see what the future holds for GT Garage Talk. You know where to find us, gtgaragetalk.com. And until next time, bye.